Hello and welcome to Genesis, the language of creation. I am Rabbi Rafi Mallet. Hope my mic is working okay. Just bumped it a little bit. Let me know if there's any issues with my video or sound. This class has been sponsored by a generous donor. Also, we have a dedication tonight from a generous donation from Joel Dreyer and his wife Christy in honor of their son JD's birthday. So happy birthday to JD Dreyer. And thank you so much for your contribution. If you'd like to support the channel, please become a channel member. You can also support the channel with a donation at the donation links in the video description. You can also support the channel by shopping at artscroll.com/Rebbe Rafi, REBBI. We have in studio Abigail, Lisa, and Colin. We have on the YouTube live stream so far, it says there are 4 people watching, and we have Judaic Noahide with a comment. Thank you so much. And I don't remember if I have any other housekeeping or announcements. A little note that I just came from an eye doctor and I had drops put in, so I'm a little dilated right now. It's definitely much better now than it was an hour ago. So I might struggle reading the text a little bit. Just give me some grace. Anyway, if anyone has any questions or comments, you're welcome at any time. Just if someone could confirm that you can see me and hear me clearly, that will be helpful.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Let's get the text up, shall we? Okay. So we are studying the text of Bereshit, Genesis. Now, this view obscures some of the text. We'll try to work around it the best we can, reshape it, resize it, whatever we need to do. Okay, so last week we did Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or Vahi Or, and God said, "Let there be light," as it were. There shall be light, and there was light. And we talked about God's speech bringing reality into creation, like the letters being akin to spiritual chemicals and the words being chemical compounds, and the same way that each chemical on the periodic table has a specific number and it has specific properties. That's the word I couldn't think of last week. Properties. And then when they combine, they produce new properties. So it is with each of the letters are a spiritual force with certain properties, and in combination, they produce something new. And God speaking was the combining these different spiritual forces to bring forth new things in the world as we know it. Okay, I'd like to go ahead with verse 4. If there's no further ado, any questions or comments before I begin? Please feel free to interrupt at any time. So I'll read it in the Hebrew Ashkenazic cantillation, and then we'll break down what it means. It sounds like this when it's read in the synagogue. Vayar Elohim es haor kitov, vayavdel Elohim bein haor uvein hachoshech. And let's start over here with Vayar. Okay, so Vayar. Ooh, that's not good. Where'd it go? Now, how badly does that grid gets very skewed over there like that? What can I do about it? Let's see if I resize it, if it makes it less egregious. Let's try resizing that. Is that better or worse or similar? It's better. Okay. So vayar, we start with the vayud, this prefix of the vayud, which is the vav hipuch, the reversing vav, and the yud, which we said the yud is normally the prefix that indicates future tense, singular, masculine, third person. He will, right? But with the reversing vav, he did. And then we have these two shoresh letters, the resh and the aleph. Now, just to reiterate, typically the rule in biblical Hebrew is that every Hebrew root, every shoresh has 3 letters, typically. So here we only see 2 of them. Now, we spoke previously about certain shoresh letters that when the shoresh is conjugated, these letters might, so to speak, disappear or fly away. Does anyone remember what those letters are?
In the name Yonah.
Right. The letters in the word Yonah, which means a dove. It's also the name Jonah. The Yud, Vav, Nun, and Hey. So here in this verb that we're looking at, the first verb here, the missing letter is the letter Hey. And the shoresh would normally be Resh, Aleph, Hey. Okay, it would be here's the Resh, here's the Aleph, and the shoresh would have a Hey, which disappears in this conjugation. And the shoresh Resh, Aleph, Hey, does anyone know what it means? I mean, if you're familiar with the English translation already, you might know what the verb is. But if someone wants to speak up, they can. No pressure. So the verb resh aleph hey, which is here with the hey missing, is the verb to see. Okay. So with the yud alone, it would mean he will see. But with the reversing vav, it becomes he did see or he saw. Okay. And because the subject follows the verb, here we have the subject, which is God's name, Elohim. So together, Vayar Elohim means and God saw. Okay. Clear? Any questions on that? Feel free to speak up at any time. Okay. So, and God saw. What did God see? Et haor. So again, we have et, similar to what we had in verse 1, right? I think that the only time it came up. Et hashamayim, the et haaretz. This word indicates the object, okay? This is the word that indicates the object. So following et or et will be the object. So in this first verse, God created is the subject and the verb. And what did he create? He created the object, which is the heavens and the earth. When we get to verse 4, we have God saw. What did God see? Et, the object. What's the object that God saw? Haor. What's haor? So hey is the definite article. The and or, which we had last week, is light. So haor, the light. And God saw the light. Any questions on that until this point? Okay, continuing. Interrupt at any time. He saw the or key. We have the word key. What is the word key? Now I see in the Sepharia it says burning or branding, which is totally new to me. I certainly would not have said that. Is anyone familiar with the word key? Okay, so the word key in Hebrew usually is translated as because. It can also be translated as that. And in different contexts, it can have an even more elastic translation, but we'll leave that for when it comes up. So this is God saw the light key. That's either because or that. Okay, he saw the light that what? Or because what? Tov. What is the word tov? Here you have on the side here, to be good, pleasing, joyful, beneficial, pleasant, favorable, happy, right? It's glad, joyful, better, well, good, pleasing. There's all kinds of things here in the Sepharia, but tov basically is good. Okay, that would be like the most basic translation. So typically this verse, you're used to hearing the translation, and God saw the light that it was good. Now you'll notice there's no verb it, and there's no indication of past tense except for this verb, this past tense. God saw. So how do we get it was? Because it really would be, and God saw the light that good, or God saw the light because good. Here, the state of being verb is implied. Okay, it's implied, and it's very typical in biblical Hebrew that the state of being is implied. So God saw the light, that tov, good, means that it, the light, is good, except we're dealing with a past tense verse. God saw. So we would sort of infer the past tense state of being. It was, okay? And God saw the light, that it was good. Or God saw the light because it was good. Keep in mind, there's an alternative translation. Okay. Any questions on that until now? Now, someone here commented, Dino Kustura, Abdullah Hashem is the living God. Okay, so everything other than the first word I got. Hashem is the living God. Agreed. What do you mean by Abdullah? Okay, now my understanding of Arabic is that Abd, it means a servant or a slave, and Allah is God, so Abdullah would be servant of God. But you wouldn't say servant of God is the living God. Hashem is how we refer to God. So I'm not clear on your meaning when you say Abdullah Hashem is the living God. Maybe you want to elaborate. Lisa, are you making a comment? Oh, I don't know. Your mic is on. I thought you were going to say something.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Fine. It says the Mahdi. Okay, you lost me. So you have to explain yourself, please. Okay, so far, and God saw the light that it was good, or because it was good. Continuing. Oh, I had another question I missed. Rabbi, why wasn't the aleph pronounced in Vayar? Sorry, I must have missed it. Okay, great question. The answer is, as we discussed in class number 1, I believe, the aleph is a silent letter. It has no sound. So unless it carries a vowel, there is no sound to be made. So you're looking at this word Vayar, and you're only hearing the resh, and not the aleph. So you're wondering, what is the aleph doing without a sound? So again, aleph is silent. It's there as part of the root of the verb to see. Okay. So if I could make that any more clear, please go ahead and ask further. Okay. Okay, it says here, he announced his appointment recently. He is the messenger sent to Jews from Elijah. So I have to confess, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm sorry, but I really can't respond. Fine. Moving on to the next phrase here. Vayavdel. Here's the next word. Vayavdel. So again, you'll start to see the pattern. You're catching on? The va-yud is like va-yar. Past tense, third person singular. And he or and it. And again, the yud would be future tense, will do something. Reversing vav, past tense. Did do something. What did it do? This shorish here, bet dalad lamed, badal. Okay. Now it's interesting that here in the Sepharia, he has badal, and he says a piece, severed piece. What else does he do? I don't know. It's not letting me scroll for some reason. But badal is the Hebrew verb meaning to separate or divide. Okay, to separate or divide. So vayavdel would mean and he separated, or and he divided. And now again, subject follows verb. So who separated or divided? Here's God's name. Vayavdel Elohim. And God separated, or and God divided. Any question on that? Judek Noah, I'd like my answer. Okay, please interrupt with a question if you have one. And God separated Bain. Okay, Bain. This word Bain, like it says here, it means between. Between. Bain is between. Now there's another word, Bain or Ben, which means a son. Son is Ben or Bain. However, the mnemonic that I use is that when Bain means son, there's no yud. It's just spelled bet followed by nun. Okay. And so when there's a yud between, see what I did there? Between the bet and the nun, that is the word bain that means between. When there's no yud between the bet and the nun, it does not mean between, it means son. So it's, what do they call that? A homonym. It sounds the same, but it's spelled differently and means something different. This bain is between. So when God divided or when God separated between what? Here again, ha or the light, just like we had here, ha or the light. Uvein, prefix vav and then again, bain, between, okay? Ha choshech. Here's other words we're familiar with already. Hey for the hey prefix the, and choshech meaning darkness, just like we had in verse 2, v'choshech al penei tahom, and darkness was over the face of the deep, as it were. Choshech is darkness. So here I have bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech, between the light and the darkness. So the full verse reads, and God saw the light, that it was good, or because it was good. And God divided, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. Now, in English, we're not used to using the word between twice. You would say between the light and the darkness. But the Hebrew idiom is you put the word bain before each of the items that are that the thing is between. So you say bain ha'or uvein ha'choshech, between the light and between the darkness. That's just how Hebrew, at least biblical Hebrew, is phrased. Okay. Any questions on that verse or on that translation, or any questions, conceptual questions?
I do have one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you differentiate like between? Well, I know with the vowel sounds, but when you're like writing, how do you know whether to use oo or the for and?
Okay, very good. And what the and prefix can come in the form of a v sound. It could also come as an oo vowel sound. And I believe what will make the difference, there are a few rules to that, to be honest. It's not so simple. But here's an example of, okay, one of the rules is depends which letter follows it. Okay, certain letters, to put the and prefix before the vav, will be an oo. I'm just trying to think of here. Well, here's one example. The bet, which is a labial letter. Labial means it's produced by the lips. So I believe in general, in front of labial letters, you don't double up the v, which is also a labial, with another labial. You make it oo instead, like oo vein. And as we go forward, we'll notice the pattern. Okay. Another situation is if the first letter in the word carries a shiva, meaning, where can I find an example of this? See, okay. Here, tehom. Okay. This word tehom, the first letter has a shiva, t. Now, the vav prefix usually has a shiva, like here, v'choshech. Are you able to see that? V'choshech. It's illegal in Hebrew, illegal to have two shivas in a row in the beginning of a word. So if I wanted to put the vav prefix, the and prefix, before a word that starts with a shiva sound like tehom, you couldn't say ve tehom. It's illegal. So you would then it would be ut home. Okay, I would use the u sound instead of ve because I can't have two shivas in a row. So those are maybe a partial set of the rules. You can't have two shivas in a row. In that case, the vav would become an u. Another rule we said is labial letters. Labial letters. If the word starts with a labial letter, a letter produced with the lips, like a pay or a vet, like we have here, then I will not use the v sound. I'll use a u sound. That's maybe a partial list of rules. Off the top of my head, I don't have it so prepared to go down the list of rules, but I feel like as we encounter it, we can explain each incident, if that's fair.
More than fair, sir. Thank you.
Okay, but those are two prominent examples that jump out at me, especially given this example, uvein. Okay. Fine. Any other questions?
Rabbi Mullet,
Yeah.
on the et, like the et haor
Yeah.
or the et hashamayim.
Yeah.
I know ha can be the. Why et hashamayim? Or et
So et is not the.
haor.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll repeat what I said before about it, is that et indicates the object of the sentence. So, for example, a sentence, not every sentence necessarily has an object and a subject, but usually a sentence has a subject and a verb, right? And then the object would be, so the subject is the one acting, the verb is the action that they are carrying out, and the object would be what is the action is being carried out on. Okay, so at least in biblical Hebrew, and even to an extent in later forms of Hebrew, the way that the object is indicated, the way you know which word in the sentence is the object, is by the word et being put in front of it. And the example we gave, like here, Bereshit bara Elohim, right, is how do I know that, again, because the verb comes first, how do I know that Bereshit did not create God? Because I could read this as Bereshit bara, Bereshit created Elohim, God.
I remember now. Thank you.
So this is the as the subject. This is the one acting. So who's the one creating? It's God. What is God creating? He's creating Eit HaShamayim ve'Eit HaAretz. He's acting upon, so to speak, these words that are being indicated by et. Tells me these are not the subject, these are the object.
Okay.
And that's the same thing here. God saw et ha'or. The light is what he saw. Okay. If you want to hear more on that, I would say go back to class number 1. I think we discussed it a bit more.
The only thing was I noticed the vowel marks are different. Does that matter? Does that make any?
I would say it's not. The vowel change from ate to et is not nothing, but it doesn't make a significant difference for our purposes.
Okay.
But you could read college level texts explaining the difference. But it's a difference that is not one that I fully comprehend or that I could articulate.
Okay.
But I do have friends who are much more expert in grammar than myself that have sent me some material on it that I found to be above my head. So I don't want to say it's nothing, but I would say it doesn't affect our examination of the text.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Judaic Noahide, Rabbi, the verb separated, does it tell us how the separation was done? For example, you can cut something into two pieces, thus separating, or with hands separating pieces. No, does not indicate what the process of separation was, just that there was a separation. Okay.
I have a question. Again, related to 8. Why is there a hyphen with 8 ha'or, but not with 8 hashemayim?
Okay, let me look at it. Okay, here's a hyphen. Okay. I'll give you two answers. Answer number 1, I'm not 100% sure. Answer number 2, what I think, and I'm just clarifying that I think, is because of the cantillation, meaning the dashes are, I believe, they're not vowels. Someone asked me a similar question this week. Might have been you, Colin.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the dashes are not vowel markers. They're really more related to the cantillation. And so here you can see the word 8 has a cantillation mark, the little elbow macaroni on the bottom, which is called a merecha. And Hashemayim has its own cantillation mark under the mem, the opposite facing macaroni noodle, which is called the tipacha. And so this has its own cantillation song, if you will, tone, and this has its own. But when you get to like here al panei, you'll notice that panei has the cantillation mark. This is called a munach, but al has none. So I think because in cantillation, every word needs to be cantillated, as it were, needs to be sung. The dash indicates that these two words are sung together with one cantillation. Okay, they're combined in the cantillation. Same thing here, and same thing here. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So again, I can't tell you I read that in a textbook because I don't read books on grammar, but what I'm telling you is based on my experience interacting with the language, that it appears to me that that is what's happening here. Okay. Somebody's asking, oh, Joseph Bowman. So great to see you on the live. How did the sages get the previous exiles from this chapter? I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but if you oh, you know what? You brought me back. I had ended one class with a cliffhanger ending that I never addressed. And now Joseph is bringing me back to it. In fact, I think Joseph even asked a question in one of the comments of the videos that made me think of this altogether. But before that class, if we go back to, the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. And I told you there's a midrash that says that the Spirit of God is Mashiach. Okay. And so it looks like, according to this midrash of the rabbis, that the Spirit of God is Mashiach, is Messiah. So that seems to indicate that Mashiach is divine and he's co-eternal with the Creator and so on, which seems to lend credence to something like the Trinity. And I told you, just like every other so-called proof of these individuals, there's nothing to it, because what I was going to do for you is to show you in context, where that's taken from. So once you have the context, it all becomes clear. So I'm going to take you to the midrash, and I have to find the right one. I believe it's Bereshit Rabbah, and let's see if they have. I'm going to just make the text smaller so I could see more of it at once. Let's see if I could find where it is in the midrash. There's a whole lot here to sift through. I wrote the citation in my notes, so give me a chance to peek at my notes, and then it'll be faster. I thought I would notice it right away, but it's just too much to scour through. Notes. Where are my notes on Genesis? And I'm not even finding it in my notes. It's killing. Okay, so I'm going to do this without the text because I can't find the citation in my text, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Okay, so just looking at the text, if I find it, I'll come back to it. But let's look at the text again. And I think this addresses. I'm bringing this up because I think this addresses Joseph's question that he asked just now. Where do the sages see the exiles? So in this verse, I think I mentioned this in my Ovadia class, that there are references to the 4 exiles all over the place. The 4 exiles being Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Okay, and Ovadia, our Ovadia class is all about the Roman exile. So when it says the earth was tohu vavohu, okay, so the sages look at this verse as an allusion to the 4 exiles. And then when it says the land was tohu, is a reference to the Babylonian exile. And bohu is a reference to the Persian exile. V'choshech, and darkness, is a reference to the Greek exile. That is when the Greeks had dominion over the Jews. And then the Tehom, the deep, is a reference to the Roman exile, which seems never ending. That's the one that we've been in for 2 millennia, whereas all these were much more limited. The Babylonian exile was 70 years, and the Persian exile was 50 years, and the Greek exile was a couple hundred years, and then the Roman exile has been a couple thousand years. So it's the deep. So the Midrash analyzes how this verse was a sort of a premonition, an allusion, if you will, to the 4 exiles. And then it says, and the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the water is a reference to the Messianic era, which will be in the future, where the Spirit of God will come to rest upon the Messiah, as it says, V'nachal av Ruach Hashem, the Spirit of God will rest upon him, Ruach Chachma Uvinah, a spirit of wisdom and discernment, Ruach Eitza Utvuna, spirit of counsel and understanding, Ruach Da'at, a spirit of knowledge, V'yirat Hashem, and fear of God. And fear of God, right? The Messiah has to fear God. He's not God. But the Spirit of God in this verse, as it's seen as a homily, a homiletical reference to the future exiles, Tohu, Bohu, Choshech, and Tehom. And then what ends the exiles is the Spirit of God, which is the Messianic era, hovering over the face of the water, which is in the merit. Actually, it's a beautiful midrash. I wish I had the text. It says, which is in the spirit of Teshuvah, which will be in the merit of Teshuvah, rather, which is compared to water. In the merit of repentance, Mashiach is going to come. So that's only if you interpret the verse not literally, but homiletically, and then it's a reference to the future, then the portion of the verse, which is the Spirit of God, that is the Messiah, is a reference to future events, that is the Messianic era, as much as this is a reference to Babylonia, and this to Persia, and this to Greece, and this to Rome. It's not saying in any way, shape, or form, and it would never be construed that way if you read it in context, that literally at the time of creation, the Spirit of God was the Messiah himself. Absolutely not the intent in that passage. Very obviously not. So I think this answers your question, Joseph, of where is the reference to the exiles in the creation story. It's seen in these words. Why did they choose to expound these words in this way? I haven't studied the Midrash deeply enough to have more insight on it, but I could just tell you what it says, and that's what it says. Okay, so I hope that's helpful to answer your question. And finally, to tie up that loose end that I forgot about many classes ago. Does the Spirit of God hovered over the waters have anything to do with the Noah thing where the dove hovered, or is there any connections? The Noah thing where the dove hovered. The dove hovered? The dove hovered. It says, V'lo matza hayona manoach l'chaf ragla. It says that the Jonah, the Yonah, the dove did not find a resting place for its foot. Is there any connection to here? Yes and no. I mean, there may be a lot in the literature that I'm not aware of because I haven't read everything on the subject. But I will say this. And I think this is an insight into that verse about hovering over the water. Why was the Spirit of God hovering over the water? And we said in that class what we said. But one thing I wanted to say was I wanted to offer the explanation of Rabbi Avigdor Miller. Rabbi Avigdor Miller, and this also links up, it connects to some of the interpretations where we said the land was Tohu Vavohu, refers to the state of the surface of the earth, meaning the planet Earth, not talking about the cosmos, but that the planet Earth was in a state that it was not, if you tell me if you remember this, we said this, that it was not suitable for settlement. It was in a not suitable for settlement, as though to say that the Torah is already foreshadowing here that the whole purpose of the creation is for the settlement of mankind on earth and the activity of mankind. This is all a preparation for mankind. And Ramban also talks about this, that the book of Genesis really is just meant to teach us that God's purpose in creating the world was so righteous individuals should inhabit it. So the earth is not prepared for settlement. And Rabbi Avigdor Miller says that's the meaning of the Spirit of God hovered over the water, means the Spirit of God is looking for a place to rest. God wants to find a resting place for his Shekhinah, for his divine presence in this world. And the resting place for the divine presence in this world is among the righteous. And so long as the earth was desolate, so long as the earth was in a state of unpreparedness, it's telling us that God's Spirit could not come to rest. God's Spirit was hovering, means there was nowhere for God to go because he did not yet have righteous individuals with whom to rest his presence. And that is what he was aiming for in his creation of the world. So in as much as it says that the dove did not find a resting place for its foot because the earth was still desolate following the flood, is connected, according to Rabbi Avigdor Miller, with the idea of God's presence hovering over the water because it was not a suitable place for it to settle because there was nowhere for mankind to dwell and to develop his righteousness. So that's the connection that I would draw. It was a similar hovering, like the dove could not find a resting place for its foot because of the desolation of the earth. So to God, because of the desolation of the earth and his purpose to settle his holiness, his Shekhinah, his divine presence among the righteous who had not yet come to be. Okay. Now what I thought people might ask, and nobody asked, is, oh, hello, John. John's here. John Volkov. What I thought people might ask and nobody asked is, like, what's going on with where's the text over here? What does it mean God saw it was good? And I teased you that it could mean because it was good. And what does it mean that God separated between the light and the darkness? Like if I turn the light on, the darkness goes away. The light and the darkness were together. What exactly does that mean? We're not going to have time to address it, but I do think that these are all questions that should bubble up in your mind. You should be thinking analytically. You should be thinking critically. And that's how one studies the Torah. God saw the light for what does it mean? God saw, okay, that it was good because it was good. What was good about it, right? God separated between the light and the darkness. Why did he do that? What does it mean they were together? What kind of separation? All great questions. We won't have time to address them. But I did want to, I thought people would ask, but I did want to point out some interesting things. Ramban rejects the idea that God was like created the light and then he like examined it and he's like, is it good? Is it bad? Let me see. Okay, it's good. So like he created and then he saw that it was good. Like he didn't know what it was going to be because we make things, we make a recipe. Did it come out good? Let me taste that. Oh, not bad, right? So God, he made a recipe, he wasn't sure if it came out good. He thought he might have messed up the recipe. What does that mean? He rejects the idea that that's what it means, that God examined it and he's like, oh, look at that, it turned out all right. Okay. And then some say, why did he's rejecting certain commentaries that say, like, why did he separate between the light and the dark? This is because he saw that the light and the dark shouldn't mix together. So like after the fact, he's like, okay, let me separate these apart, as though they, at first he wanted to put them together and then he saw, now they're not getting along, let me separate them. So what he proposes is and he doesn't propose like maybe, he says this with a high degree of certainty, and it's not too different from what Maimonides says in the beginning of the Guide for the Perplexed, when he has like his word theory. He talks about the idea that words in Hebrew have multiple meanings, which is obviously true, and that all the meanings are the literal meaning. All of the if this word has 3, 4, 5 meanings, every single one of them is the literal meaning of the word. You just have to know what the word means. So we translate this as saw, right? And when we think of saw, we think like with eyes, we have sight. Does that apply to God? So the same thing with like saying, etc. We spoke about last week. Saying for God could mean more like in thought, or could mean effortless creation, right? And we spoke about that last week. Ramban says that seeing, when God sees a thing, that means that he wills for it to have continued existence. Very deep, very deep. In other words, you think of it as like the mind's eye. I see it in my mind's eye. Okay. And as long as I'm thinking about it, it exists because there's a picture of it in my mind, whatever it is, a birthday cake. I see a birthday cake in my mind's eye. It exists because I can see it right now. I have an image of the birthday cake. There it is. But if I move my attention to something else and I forget about the birthday cake, it's gone because it only existed as a figment of my thought. When I'm not thinking about it, it's gone. To a certain degree, the universe is like that. Our existence is a projection of God's consciousness. And so long as God consciously wills for us to exist, we exist. And if God were to withdraw his will for us to exist for a single moment, we have no intrinsic existence. We can't just exist without God's constant input. It's a very deep Jewish philosophical idea. So the idea of God seeing the light, says Ramban, means God created the light and willed it to have continued existence. And the reason it doesn't say that God saw the heavens and the earth when he created it on the first day, says Ramban, is because they were in an incomplete form. So he didn't see it, meaning he did not will for it to remain in its current form, in a chaotic, undeveloped form. God would yet develop it into its individual parts. And as God develops the universe into its individual parts, he then sees them. That means he then wills to have continued existence in their completed forms. So God creates the light and then sees the light. That is, he wills for the light to continue to exist. And then the phrase of ki tov, he saw the light that it was good. So again, the question is, and if he didn't see it, he wouldn't know it was good. And was there even a thought that it wasn't good? So here, essentially, ki tov, that it was good, you could translate it more literally as because it was good, meaning because it had reached its full, complete, and desired form. Because the light was in its now desirable form, the form that God wanted it to arrive at. So now, Vayar, he willed, he saw it, he creates, so to speak, a permanent mental image of it. And it gains permanence. Okay, now what's the vayavdel? What's the separation? We'll probably finish after this. The vayavdel, the separation is, according to Ramban. Now, there's all kinds of different ideas bandied about in many dozens of commentaries, and you're welcome to explore them all. I'm just going to propose one that I think is somewhat reasonable and easy to digest, and not tremendously mystical. It doesn't mean, you hear this, that the light and the dark were mixed together like some of the commentaries propose, and then God divided them from one another. But rather, God created a division initially, that there should be a period of light and a period of darkness. That was, so to speak, God's design from the beginning, is that there should be a period of light and a period of darkness. So in creating the light, he separated or divided between the light and the darkness, in that he set up a half a day period where the light would be dominant, and a half a day period known as night, which we're going to find out in the next verse, where God gives names to these periods, but a half a day period where there would be darkness. So the description of God dividing between the light and the darkness is not a description of two things mixed together that are being separated from one another, but rather a division being set up initially when God made the light. The light is going to dominate half the day, and the darkness is going to dominate half the day. And that is the division between light and dark, that they will each have a period. Okay. And he does clarify that this is not the same darkness as we heard about earlier, when it said that darkness covered the face of the deep. And again, that's also going to be an argument among the commentaries. Well, some say this darkness is just the absence of light. As we mentioned before, the Ramban says that's not the case. This darkness is the primordial fire. You can go back to that class for what we said about that. And again, as words have multiple meanings, the word choshech, meaning darkness, here is referring to something different than the word choshech here. Here it's a primordial darkness, which is actually if you will, a type of a substance, which he calls a primordial fire. And here it literally means the absence of light. Similar to the way that we have God creates the earth in the first verse, and yet we find that the earth is particulated into all these different pieces, and later on the word aretz is going to mean specifically land, and yet here it doesn't mean God made land. The earth here refers to this primordial matter that contains all kinds of ingredients and building blocks that are going to be particulated into the physical creation. So the word aretz has a different meaning in the context of the early verses of creation than it'll mean later on when the creation becomes more particulated and fully formed. So it shouldn't surprise us that we'll find similar words that mean different things in the text. And you can even use another corollary to the fact that here the Spirit of God, we said this name God could actually just mean powerful. So the Ruach Elohim could mean a powerful wind. And that means within one verse and the next, we have the same word, one referring to a divinity and once not referring to a divinity. So anyway, I'm just pointing out that because in Hebrew, there's a little conversation Abigail had and I had before the class, is that because in Hebrew, there's a very limited vocabulary, the words have multiple meanings. Maimonides fleshes this out in the Guide for the Perplexed, and Ramban applies some of these different meanings to the creation, that words mean different things in the creation when God is doing them than they'll mean later on when the universe is fully formed and man is on the stage. Okay, so God seeing, we have one idea of seeing, but Ramban says in the context of God seeing, it's not like you and I see. Seeing means God's desire for permanence in the object. Okay, and So Ramban will do that throughout the creation text and explain verbs when God performs them as what it means on the, so to speak, the God level versus what it means on our level. Okay, so that's verse 4, and that's just
Rab-
conceptual
sorry.
material. Go ahead.
Rabbi, how are we to understand this light? If we've got day and night, but it's not sunlight,
Mm.
so how are we to understand, like to grasp what it is?
Okay, great question. Too big a question for me to answer right now, but I'll give you a little food for thought. Again, according to different commentaries, they will argue about what this light is. In other words, some do not accept that it is visible light like we're used to, right? Like when we think of light, the visible spectrum of light, this was some type of a spiritual light, and it's not the same as the light that's going to emanate from the luminaries God will create on the fourth day. And as a matter of fact, once God puts the luminaries in the sky, this light is going to disappear, and it's going to be put away in the spiritual realm and only be revealed to the souls of the righteous. And it gets very mystical. And the truth is that the Genesis creation story, is a very mystical narrative, and that's why the Ramban says it's nearly impossible to understand it. He says, like, my knowledge of this is like a drop in the ocean, like we looked at. And even with all that, he was a mystic, he was a Kabbalist, and his commentary on these passages includes a lot of mysticism. And with all his knowledge, he says, we're very limited. So I certainly cannot say much more about it. But the other idea is that, yeah, well, I'll just say it like this: before the luminaries were set in the sky as permanent bodies that produce this light, the light may have emanated from another source. And although that source is not given, it's not impossible to conceive that there were light sources in the cosmos. There were things that, in other words, before the sun was the sun, did nothing else give off light in the universe? I'm asking from a scientific perspective. Of course, that's not the case. The sun is not the only source of light in the cosmos. So there could have been all manner of light sources that, for whatever reason, God was causing the earth to be subject to. And it could be that the earth was rotating. Maybe yes, maybe no. And so maybe it would rotate relative to a light source that we don't know what it was, and it would be half a day covered in light and half a day not covered in light. I would just say it's kind of it. Let me put it a different way. I'll give you my typical answer. I don't know. Okay, it's a roundabout way of saying I don't know, but I think it's conceivable. I think it's conceivable that there were alternative light sources other than the permanent ball of the sun that God would eventually affix into the sky. And and there's a million questions that get raised when I say that, especially from a scientific perspective, and maybe we'll address it when we get to that verse. But I'm proposing that there were perhaps alternative sources of light, even if we consider this to be a physical description of the cosmos. And like I said, there are others who say this is more of a spiritual light, and of course, those same sources will not concede to the Ramban that when it says God separated between the light and the dark, that it's talking about 12-hour period of day and a 12-hour period of night, although it does seem to say that kind of pretty directly in the next verse. But they do see this light and this darkness as something more mystical. That right? So what exactly is the meaning of the light? Not something that I can necessarily explicate, but at least according to the Ramban, who wants to understand it as physical light and darkness as the absence of light, and the division between darkness and light, as the next verse will indicate, is the separation between day and night. That I'm gonna propose that there was an alternative source of light prior to the affixing of the star of the sun as the center of our solar system, around which the Earth was rotating. As I'm speaking, I'm thinking of other ideas also, but they're all conjecture, and I don't know how much time I should take. So it's a good question. I don't have a complete answer, but those are just some thoughts off the top of my head. Okay, I see there's a bunch of questions in the YouTube comments, but I don't want to go so much over time, especially because I'm once again find myself the lone parent home right now, so I have to go be a parent. But in summary, we translated verse number 4. We have the verb for seeing, this verb here, resh aleph hey. The verb for dividing, bet daled lamed, and some review of the et as indicating the object, the reversing vav, the yud indicating future tense, singular masculine third person, ki meaning that or because, tov, good, bain between, and again haor, hachoshech, the light, the darkness. So we have some new vocabulary to chomp on, and I think we'll end the class here. If I didn't get to your question, I see there's a bunch of comments. I would just say reach out to me, rabbi@rafimal.com. If you have my WhatsApp info, you can message me on WhatsApp. If you want my WhatsApp info, email me, and we could trade details. And that's about it. I'm peeking at the comments for a second. Liz says that is beautiful. I'm not sure what you're referring to. What happened to that light? Great question. Too much to talk about right now. Actually, I addressed it I addressed it with a mystical statement that we find in the commentaries, but I don't know that I could explain it more than that. What was the source of the light? Did God create the physical properties of the light, such as its wavelength, speed, etc.? Maybe, all I could say is maybe. It seems, at least according to some commentaries, that light was created in its final form, especially according to Ramban, that God saw the light means that he willed for it to continue to exist in its form, that all the properties of light that we're familiar with today were set into place at that time. What's the light made of? Ask a scientist. Sounds like thoughts are energy. That's pretty mystical sounding to me. I don't know. It sounds like a big topic. Does the word Torah and light have a connection? 100%. I'll try to address this quickly. Or, meaning light, and Torah are 100% related. They both, because again, yes, they are related. Torah means teaching or guidance. To teach is lehorot. It's a teacher is a moreh, and someone who shoots an arrow is a yoreh. Yoreh means to shoot an arrow, and it means essentially to shoot something like a beam. Okay, so when we teach, we are sort of broadcasting whatever it is, wisdom, guidance, but also light is a guide, right? When something is lit up, it lights the way, it guides the way. So the idea of moreh, which is a guide or a teacher, same word in Hebrew, or the Torah, which is a guide or a set of instructions, as it were, or teaching, if you will, and or meaning light, or yoreh, to shoot a beam, an arrow is the same verb. Is all this idea of beaming. It's basically what it is. It's beaming. So whether you're beaming light, or you're beaming knowledge, or you're using light as a guide, or you guidance and knowledge as a light, these words are definitely linguistically related in Hebrew. Or Torah, hora'ah, which means teaching also. Moreh, a teacher. All related, all related. And in fact, in Aramaic, the word for Torah is oraita. The word or is directly in the Aramaic word for Torah, which means like, again, like guide, guiding light, teaching. So yeah, that's definitely the case. Why did God think the light was good? He must have a vision for the future. The moon in its different phases reveals the beauty of the dark. Okay. These verses are talking about the universe as a whole and eventually the actual earth. Yes, but again, we saw some differences in the commentaries, whether the verses are talking more about the expansive universe or more with a direct focus on the planet Earth. Here, certainly, it seems to be more. There's more and more focus on the Earth itself, especially if we look at it as the division between light and dark as the creation of day and night, which is specifically on Earth, right? Oh, that the righteous have a place where where Hashem can rest. That's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. That's why I wanted to mention it. Great class. Have a blessed week. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming, for being part of the class, participating, and hopefully this Sunday we'll continue with the Ovadia series, and next Tuesday with Genesis.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.